For decades, as I observed the human spirit, I noticed a deep misconception that crosses generations. It's like a silent shadow, almost imperceptible, that seeps into our beliefs and drives us to live in fear, anxiety, and haste. This mistake is the idea that youth represents the peak of life, and that if we don't achieve our greatest accomplishments before the age of 30 or 40, we are doomed to a future of mediocrity and emptiness. Let me tell you clearly, this is an illusion forged by the modern world, fueled by comparisons, social pressure, and the false images of success sold to us every single day. This belief has crushed countless hearts, turning people into prisoners of anguish, as if each birthday were the ticking of a clock announcing defeat. But the truth is different. Life does not end at 40. It begins. Everything that came before was not a waste, not a delay, not a failure. It was preparation. Those were years of rehearsal, of stumbles, necessary falls. Meetings and farewells that shaped character and refined the soul. Until 40, we haven't yet lived our main story. We've only been gathering tools, memories, and scars that later become the instruments for building our true selves. Youth, contrary to what people believe, is not the final destination. It is only fertile soil, the field where seeds are planted. During that time, we work, fight, love, suffer, dream, fail, and succeed, not to finish a journey, but to prepare the ground for a new stage of existence. And this new stage is no longer marked by haste, but by depth. No longer driven by impulsive explosions, but by a maturity that rises like a quiet dawn, inviting us to look inward. It is around the age of 40 that the call of the soul begins to grow audible. Until then, we live turned outward, chasing approval, seeking recognition, pursuing material success. We try to live up to society's expectations, walking paths we often did not choose ourselves, but because we were told life was supposed to be that way. But then comes the moment, often arriving right in midlife, when all these things lose their flavor. What once felt urgent no longer satisfies us. What once seemed essential no longer defines us. What once fueled us now feels empty. Many call this a crisis, but I prefer to call it an opportunity, because it is here that the soul finally begins to cry louder than the ego. Suddenly, the external world, with all its noise, can no longer silence the essential question. Echoing within us, who am I really? That's when the most important process begins, individuation, the awakening of the soul. The moment when we stop living merely as projections of the world's expectations and start becoming what we truly are. It is not the beginning of the end. It is the end of the beginning, the first step toward authenticity. So do not fear aging. Do not fear the passing of time. Until 40, you've gathered only fragments, scattered pieces of a puzzle. But after that, milestone, the real story begins. That is when you finally turn inward and dare to discover your own essence. And here, I offer you an invitation. If these words stirred something within you, if you feel you are in this moment of transition, write in the comments, "I choose to live my true story." This phrase is not just a comment, it is a declaration before life itself. And more. Subscribe now to the channel Unshakable Mind. Here, we don't talk about quick fixes. We talk about depth, self-knowledge, and the courage to face yourself. If you want to continue this journey with me, turn on notifications, because in the coming chapters, I'll take you even deeper into the soul's path. Real life, my friends, does not happen when we blindly follow what we're told. Real life begins when we dare to listen to ourselves, and that is exactly what we are going to explore from here on. In youth, we are like leaves opening to the sun for the very first time. The whole world feels new. Vibrant, full of promises. It is during this period that we absorb ideas, values, and beliefs from those around us, our parents, teachers, friends, and the culture we are immersed in. It is a phase of rapid growth, but also of great vulnerability. Because while we try to understand how the world works, we also seek to answer the most fundamental question of all: who am I? These questions rise with intensity. What should I do with my life? Which path should I take? What will truly bring me happiness? They are powerful questions, but the answers we find in those early years are often fragile, incomplete, and fleeting. It's as if we were building a house on foundations still wet. In youth, we seek security in the external, a career that gives us status, a relationship that makes us feel accepted, friends who validate our choices. We work hard, compete, sacrifice nights of sleep, and often we even sacrifice our own soul in exchange for social approval. We want to climb the ladder of life, but rarely do we stop to ask whether that ladder is leaning against the right wall. And then, inevitably, we stumble, we fail, we get frustrated, we watch some dreams collapse. At times, we feel the weight of loneliness, even when surrounded by people. All of this seems like pain, but in truth it is learning. We are being shaped. Each failure, each unresolved relationship, each night of doubt, all of it becomes a brick in the construction of who we will become later on. That is why I wrote in my reflections on archetypes and the collective unconscious that this phase is only preparation. It is a time of research, of gathering, of observation. It is when we lay the foundation, often without realizing it, for something much deeper that is yet to come, because there comes a moment when the glow of youth begins to fade. And far from being an ending, this is only an invitation. As we approach midlife, around 40 years old, something inside us begins to shift. The old ways of living no longer satisfy us. What once seemed essential, climbing the career ladder, accumulating possessions, proving our worth to the world, loses its power. What once drove us no longer feeds us. And it is in this moment that many people feel fear. They say, "I'm in crisis." But I tell you, it is not a crisis, it is a transition. It is life taking away the toys of childhood and offering us for the very first time the call of the soul. It is as if until now we had only been rehearsing for a role, and suddenly the main stage opens before us. Up until this point, we have lived facing outward, chasing the gaze of others. But in midlife, we are invited to turn inward, and what we find in that dive is not always easy. Shadows, frustrations, forgotten parts of ourselves. Yet it is precisely there, in that descent, that individuation begins to blossom. This is why we should not fear youth with its mistakes, nor midlife with its ruptures. Youth was necessary for us to learn how to deal with the external world, but maturity is necessary for us to learn how to deal with our own soul. And now I want you to try something. If these words touched you, write in the comments, "I am ready to look within." This phrase is not just a comment, but a public commitment, a declaration of courage before life itself. And remember, if you want to continue this journey, if you want to go deeper into these reflections with me, subscribe now to the Unshakable Mind channel. Activate the bell so you Don't miss the next chapters, because each new video is a piece of this inner puzzle we are putting together step by step. Youth teaches us to live outward. Maturity invites us to live inward, and when we unite these two forces, only then do we finally discover who we truly are. As time passes, many of you begin to notice something unsettling. Most of the choices you made did not truly come from your heart, but from the expectations of others. The careers you pursued, the relationships you maintained, the dreams you chased, how many of them were really yours, and how many were shaped by external definitions of success and happiness. When that awareness arrives, it can feel disorienting, even painful. It is as if the life you once believed to be solid suddenly reveals itself as fragile. And yet, at the same time, this realization is liberating. Because recognizing that many of your choices were guided by others means that, from this moment on, you can finally begin to live on your own terms. This marks the beginning of a new phase, a process I called individuation. It is not merely about aging or maturing, but something far deeper, the movement of the soul toward wholeness. The path of becoming whole, authentic, reconciling the fragmented parts of yourself. It is the moment to stop playing imposed roles and take up the great work of living according to who you truly are. But make no mistake, this change does not happen overnight. It is not a sudden illumination, nor an abrupt leap into a new state of being. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly. Often it reveals itself in small, quiet questions that rise at unexpected moments. Is this really all life has to offer? Am I truly living the life I desire? These questions may arise on a significant birthday, when the weight of age presses on your mind. They may surface after a professional achievement, when the expected joy never comes, or late at night, when the house is silent and you find yourself alone with your own thoughts. And something curious happens. Once these questions appear, they never disappear. On the contrary, they grow more insistent, louder, harder to ignore. They begin to demand answers, and those answers inevitably require courage. Because to find them, you will have to face yourself in ways you never have before. This is the point many call a midlife crisis. The world loves labels. For society, it is easier to say someone is in crisis than to recognize that they are. Standing before an opportunity for transformation. It is more comfortable to call a collapse what, in reality, is a rebirth. I invite you to reframe this experience. It is not collapse, it is calling. It is not downfall, it is the awakening of the soul. The discomfort you feel is not a sign of failure, but the announcement of a new path. A path where, for the first time, you are not living to satisfy external expectations, but to draw nearer to the deepest truth of your being. Yes, it can be painful. Yes, it demands that you let go of illusions. Yes, it requires the courage to confront shadows that have long been hidden. But it is precisely in this confrontation that life finds meaning. Individuation is not the easiest path. It is the most authentic. And here I want to speak directly to you who are listening now. If these words echoed in your soul, write in the comments, "I choose to become whole." This phrase, written publicly, is more than a simple gesture. It is a declaration of intent. It is you affirming before yourself that you are ready to step into this process of transformation. And if you wish to walk this journey with me, don't forget, subscribe to the Unshakable Mind channel. Turn on notifications so we can walk together. Each new video will be another piece of this process of individuation, a fresh invitation to deepen your understanding and awaken your courage. Remember, what the world calls crisis, I call opportunity. What many see as an ending is, in truth, a beginning. Because real life is not found in blindly fulfilling social expectations, but in the bold act of living in fidelity to your own soul. And what if what so many call a crisis was not really a crisis at all? What if this stage of life, with all its doubts, challenges and changes, were exactly the opportunity we needed to become the person we were always meant to be? This question is not just an intellectual exercise, it is a key. Because when we stop viewing midlife as collapse and begin to see it as a portal, life changes its meaning. The weight transforms into invitation, fear becomes awakening. In my reflections gathered in works such as Memories, Dreams, Reflections, I stated that midlife is not the beginning of the end, as many fear. It is the beginning of something far more real, meaningful, and authentic. It is at this moment that the human being is called to abandon illusions and draw closer to their true essence. But to understand this, perspective, we first need to look at the first half of life. In this initial phase, our focus is on building what I called the persona. The persona is the external identity we present to the world. It is the set of roles, behaviors, and images we project in order to be accepted, recognized, and approved by others. This persona is shaped by family, culture, and social expectations. It is the version of ourselves that strives to fit in, to meet others' expectations, to achieve success according to external rules. It is like a costume we wear to move through society, and make no mistake, this stage is necessary. We should not despise it. Without the persona, we could not live in community. We would not learn to navigate work, relationships, or adult life. The persona teaches us to adapt, to negotiate our place in the world, to create the practical foundations of existence. But the persona is not the whole self. It is only a mask, a role we play on a particular stage. It can be useful, but it must never be mistaken for our essence. The problem arises when we believe that we are nothing more than this mask, when we think our identity is limited to what we show to others. In the first half of life, this doesn't seem like a problem. We are too busy building, achieving, proving ourselves. The persona serves us well during this time, but there comes a moment when it begins to feel heavy. It is like wearing clothes that are too tight. At first they seem bearable, but over time they begin to suffocate. And it is precisely in midlife that this feeling of suffocation emerges. What once seemed sufficient no longer satisfies. The persona begins to crack, and in that instant many fall into despair, believing they are losing themselves. But the truth is the opposite. We are not losing who we are. We are simply letting the mask fall away. This process, though painful, is liberating. For the first time, we have the chance to see who we are beyond social roles, beyond expectations, beyond the facade. It is the opportunity to come into contact with the true self, the one that has always been there but remained hidden behind the persona. Yes, it is frightening, because in removing the mask, we must confront the truth. And the truth often reveals that we have spent years playing a role that was not entirely ours. But at the same time, it is the only chance for authenticity. It is the only path to individuation. That is why I tell you, do not run from this moment. Do not Merely call it a crisis. See it as the beginning of real life, because midlife, with all its restlessness, is the call of the soul to live without masks. And now I want to propose something. If these words have spoken to your heart, if you feel you might be living through this moment where the persona is no longer enough, write in the comments, "I choose to live without masks." This phrase is more than a comment. It is a commitment, a way of telling yourself and the world that you are ready for authenticity. And remember, subscribe to the Unshakable Mind channel. Turn on notifications, because here we dive deep into the human soul. We do not seek superficial shortcuts, but true transformation. Each new video is an opportunity to remove another layer of the mask and draw closer to who you really are. The persona was necessary. It fulfilled its role. But now the stage changes. And the protagonist who must appear is no longer the mask. It is you. The persona, as I said, is only a part of who we are. It has its usefulness, but it can never be confused with the entirety of our being. The problem begins when we cling too tightly to it, believing that this carefully constructed mask is our true identity. In youth, this barely bothers us. But as we reach midlife, cracks begin to appear. The fissures in the persona become visible. The successful professional, who built a career with so much effort, realizes that perhaps the title and salary no longer fill their heart. The devoted father or mother who sacrificed so much for the family begins to sense there is more beyond the role of provider or caregiver. The faithful partner, committed to the image of stability, discovers that there are still unfulfilled longings within. It is at this moment that the sense of restriction arises, as if the roles we have played and once took pride in begin to feel like cages. We start to sense that there is more in us than the image we project. And this is where the true work of the soul begins. This process I called individuation. Individuation is the path of integration, of reconciliation with all parts of ourselves. Not just the socially accepted ones, the polished, polite, controlled image, but also those that were rejected, hidden, or repressed. Here emerges an essential figure of the psyche, the shadow. In my book, Man and His Symbols, I describe the shadow as everything we reject in ourselves. It is the collection of our fears, insecurities, impulses, and unrealized desires. These are parts of ourselves we deny because society, or even we ourselves, consider them unacceptable. But the shadow does not disappear just because we hide it. On the contrary, the more we deny it, the more power it gains. And eventually, it begins to manifest in unexpected ways, in outbursts of anger, in compulsions, in feelings of emptiness, in disturbing dreams. The shadow is not an enemy, but a messenger. It screams because it wants to be seen. Facing the shadow can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it is even painful. It is like holding up a mirror that shows not only our smiling face, but also everything we avoid confronting. Yet it is indispensable. Only by recognizing and accepting these parts of ourselves can we become whole. The shadow holds not only what is ugly or undesirable, it also carries forgotten potentials, stifled talents, desires that could lead us to creativity and vitality, but that we buried to appear acceptable. It is like a locked vault. Dangerous if ignored, transformative if opened with courage. Individuation, therefore, is not a process of denying the shadow, but of integrating it, of looking at it and saying, "I acknowledge that you are part of me." This gesture does not make us weak, it makes us complete. And here is a hard truth to swallow. Those who do not confront their shadow remain its prisoners. They project onto others what they refuse to see in themselves. They criticize in others the same flaws they silently carry. They condemn in the world what is hidden in their own hearts. But those who face the shadow, who integrate it, discover a new strength, a freedom they have never experienced before. Because the shadow is not only darkness, it is also raw energy waiting to be transformed. This is the call of midlife, not to deny the life that has passed, but to deepen it, not to destroy the persona, but to go beyond it, not to suffocate the shadow, but to illuminate it. And now I want to look directly at you who are listening. If you feel that you have already noticed cracks in your persona, if you sense that something within you is asking to be seen, write in the comments, "I have the courage to face my shadow." This phrase is more than words. It is a step, a commitment to yourself. And remember, subscribe to the Unshakable Mind channel. Here, I want to guide you on this journey without masks, without illusions, without fear of looking at what is hidden. Because only those who confront their shadow find their true light. Individuation is the work of a lifetime, and it begins right here, at the moment we dare to admit that we are far more than the mask we show. When we reach midlife, the process of individuation gains a new intensity. The questions that visit us no longer revolve around external achievements, status, career, recognition, but touch a deeper, more essential level. The question is no longer, what must I achieve to prove my worth? But what truly matters to me? What do I want to leave as a legacy? What kind of life do I truly want to create from here on out? These questions are not trivial. They are profound invitations that demand courage, and above all, they are questions that cannot be answered by others. Neither society, nor family, nor friends can provide them. These answers can only emerge from within us, in the silence of the soul, in attentive listening to our inner voice. It is at this moment that priorities begin to shift. In youth, we were driven by ambition, competition, the desire to prove to the world that we were capable. We built, ran, and competed, believing that the value of life lay in how much we could achieve. But in midlife, something changes. That external race begins to lose its luster. Gradually, life becomes less about doing and more about being. We no longer seek incessantly to prove our worth. Now, we long to live in alignment with who we truly are. This shift is so profound that even modern science begins to confirm it. Neuroscience studies show that as we age, the brain undergoes significant transformations. Emotional centers reorganize, making us less reactive and more inclined to seek meaning. Instead of reacting impulsively to external pressures, we become more reflective, more conscious, more sensitive to what truly gives life significance. Psychology and biology seem to converge at this point. Both indicate that midlife is not a decline, but an opportunity. It is the beginning of a new way of living, in which we finally turn inward and hear the wisdom that has always been there, but which the noise of youth prevented us from perceiving. This transformation also manifests in our choices. Superficial relationships no longer appeal. Empty conversations lose value. The desire to compete gives way to the need to share. The impulse to accumulate is replaced by the longing to simplify. And this transformation does not signify loss, but gain. By leaving excess behind, we make space for what truly matters. This stage of life invites us to redefine what success means, no longer as a trophy displayed for the world, but as a state of inner peace. True success becomes living in alignment with the soul. It becomes waking up in the morning and feeling that what we do, think and feel is aligned with who we truly are. And here, my friends, emerges one of the greatest gifts of midlife, the search for legacy. I am not speaking merely of material inheritances or visible achievements. True legacy is what we leave in the hearts of others, in the bonds we cultivate, in the way we touch people's lives. It is at this point that many realize what they truly desire is to transmit love, wisdom, and authenticity. But this transformation demands courage. It requires us to abandon old benchmarks. It asks us to admit that perhaps we have pursued dreams that were not truly our own. It calls for acknowledging that we spent years trying to meet the gaze of others, when in reality, the gaze that matters most is our own. And this is where I want to speak directly to you. If you feel you are at this stage of life, where you no longer wish merely to achieve, but to live in alignment with your true self, write in the comments, "I choose to live in authenticity." This phrase is more than words. It is a vow before your own soul. And remember, subscribe now to the Unshakable Mind channel. Here, we will continue exploring this path of transformation, blending psychological wisdom with deep reflections. Turn on notifications, because each new video is another step on the journey inward. Midlife is not the emptying of life, it is fulfillment. It is the moment when finally we stop seeking in the outside world what has always been within us. And when we dare to live in alignment with our being, we discover that the greatest legacy we can leave is simply having been ourselves. As we move into midlife, something extraordinary begins to happen within us. The brain's circuits become more balanced. We no longer react with the same impulsivity of youth. We become less reactive and more reflective, more capable of observing life with calm, clarity, and perspective. This emotional maturity is one of the greatest gifts of time. It allows us at last to make decisions grounded not in fear, but in our deepest values. It is as if, after years of living on autopilot, obeying external expectations, and repeating unconscious patterns, we are invited to live more consciously, more intentionally. Life ceases to be merely a sequence of automatic responses and becomes a deliberate creation, shaped by the choices of the soul. But let us not be mistaken. This phase is not free of challenges. On the contrary, midlife can be a period of great turbulence. The process of questioning and redefining ourselves often requires leaving behind old identities, roles, relationships, and goals that no longer make sense. Letting go can feel painful, almost like an irreparable loss. That is why many describe this moment as a crisis. And indeed, from the outside, it may look like a collapse, drastic changes, uncertainties, a feeling of not belonging. But I tell you, what the world calls a crisis, I see as a necessary dismantling. It is not an end, but a process of reconstruction. Brené Brown, a contemporary researcher on vulnerability, referred to the so-called midlife crisis as a dismantling. And I agree with this view, because at this stage of life we are challenged to abandon the illusion of who we thought we should be, the persona shaped by social, familial, and cultural pressures, and to embrace who we truly are at our essence. This dismantling is rarely elegant. It can be messy, uncomfortable, painful. It may involve difficult conversations, unexpected ruptures, nights of solitude and deep silence. It may feel as though everything is collapsing. But in reality, the opposite is happening. The old foundation is being removed so that something more genuine and solid can emerge. In the psyche, this process is comparable to a descent into the unconscious. It is the encounter with the shadow, with aspects we previously avoided seeing. There is no individuation without this confrontation, and it is precisely this passage, apparently dark, that opens the space for the light of authenticity. I often say that life moves in two halves. In the first half, we strive to adapt to the world, to carve out space, to build the persona necessary for survival. But in the second half, we are invited to turn inward, to dismantle illusions, to reclaim the soul we may have set aside. That is why, although painful, the dismantling of midlife is also a birth. And here arises a fascinating paradox. While we lose old references, we discover a new source of strength. We realize that we are not only the roles we play, nor the masks we wear. We are something much vaster, deeper, freer. So do not be afraid of this process. If you feel your life is falling apart, that old patterns no longer hold, that former identities are crumbling. Understand, this is not the end. This is the beginning of real life. And I want to propose something to you who are listening right now. In the comments, write, "I am ready to rebuild myself." This simple act is a commitment to your own journey, a gesture of courage in response to the call of your soul. And don't forget, subscribe now to the Unshakable Mind channel. Here, we explore these hidden truths that can transform the weight of midlife into a profound awakening. Turn on notifications, because each reflection may be the key you've been missing for the next step of your individuation. Remember, what seems to be falling apart is only what was never truly yours. What remains after the dismantling is your authentic self, and with it comes the possibility of a life that is finally worth living. Major changes in life often frighten us. Periods of uncertainty feel as though they threaten everything we know, as if we are walking on unstable ground. But I tell you, it is precisely in these moments of transition that the seed of extraordinary growth resides. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and survivor of unimaginable horrors in the Holocaust, discovered something essential. The greatest force driving the human being is the will to find meaning. And this meaning is not something handed to us, like a ready-made gift. It is something each of us must build, step by step, within the circumstances of our own life. In midlife, this search for meaning becomes urgent. We are no longer content to live according to the script others wrote for us, the script of society, of family, of convention. We yearn for a life that is genuinely meaningful, even if it looks nothing like what we imagined decades ago. But to reach that, we must traverse the terrain of our fears. The fear of others' judgment, which so often binds us to paths that are not ours. The fear of failure, which keeps us from trying something new. And perhaps the most paralyzing of all, the fear of the unknown. A vastness that offers no guarantees, yet holds the possibility of something greater. These fears can chain us, but midlife brings a unique opportunity, the chance to confront them directly, to see them not as enemies, but as gateways. Because only by passing through these gateways can we rewrite the story of our life. Only by facing them can we leave behind what no longer serves and embrace what truly matters. Abraham Maslow, pioneer of humanistic Psychology described this process as self-actualization. It is the drive to fulfill our deepest potential, to become the most authentic and complete version of ourselves. And I tell you, midlife is the most fertile ground for this blossoming. At this stage, we carry not only dreams, but also experiences, scars, memories, and wisdom. All of this becomes raw material for creating something new. Do not think that self-actualization means perfection. It is not about eliminating flaws or living without pain. On the contrary, true self-actualization is integrating light and shadow, accepting the complexity of who we are, and still moving toward what gives life meaning. That is why, when I am asked if midlife is the end, I answer, no. It is the moment we finally receive the invitation to be who we were meant to be from the very beginning. It is a profound call, echoing not on the surface of life, but in the soul. And here I want to speak directly to you listening right now. Perhaps you are at this very moment facing uncertainties. Perhaps you are questioning whether there is still time to change, to start over, to reinvent yourself. And I tell you, yes, there is. As long as life pulses within you, there is the possibility to write a new story. So let me propose something. Write in the comments the phrase, "I choose to live with meaning." By writing this, you are not merely interacting. You are affirming to yourself a deep commitment to your journey. And do not forget, subscribe now to the Unshakable Mind channel. This space exists to accompany you through your process of individuation on this path of self-discovery and transformation. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next reflections, because each video may bring the key that opens a new door in your inner life. Remember, the fears that today seem like walls are, in reality, gateways. By passing through them, you lose nothing of what is essential. You simply release the chains that were never truly yours. And on the other side lies meaning, the true reason you are here. In midlife, self-actualization takes on unprecedented depth. It is no longer about chasing medals, applause, or external achievements that often serve only to feed the ego. Now, the true focus shifts inward. It is about finding fulfillment, authenticity, and a sense of purpose that does not depend on others' approval. This process, however, is not easy. It requires courage to face directly what we have often spent a lifetime avoiding. It demands traversing inner shadows, revisiting choices, and relinquishing expectations that no longer fit our soul. But despite the difficulty, I assure you, it is profoundly rewarding. Current research confirms what I have long intuited from observing the human psyche. People in their 40s, 50s, and beyond often report higher levels of life satisfaction than those in their 20s or 30s. This happens because over time we learn to connect more authentically with ourselves and with others. We worry less about judgment and more about what truly brings joy and purpose. This is the secret gift of midlife. Freedom. The freedom to finally live on our own terms, not the life society imposed, not the script we inherited from family, but the life that emerges from within, from the soul, from what we truly are. And I tell you, this freedom does not come from denying who we were, but from integrating all that we carry. Jung believed that the process of individuation, this path to wholeness, occurs only when we embrace the totality of the self. That means welcoming both light and darkness, successes and failures, realized dreams and lingering disappointments. It is not a process of exclusion, but of integration. It is not about choosing only the beautiful parts of life, but also accepting the difficult parts, the wounds, the fears, the mistakes we have made. In my Red Book, I wrote that the most terrifying thing for a human being is to fully accept oneself. And I stand by this statement, because self-acceptance requires looking into the eyes of your own shadow, recognizing impulses you would rather deny, admitting weaknesses you have hidden even from yourself. But paradoxically, this is also the most liberating act anyone can undertake. For when we accept our totality, we no longer need to pretend. We no longer need to carry heavy masks or meet impossible expectations. We finally become free to be. This freedom does not mean the absence of pain or difficulty. On the contrary, life will continue to present challenges, losses, and trials. But the difference is that when we live in alignment with our deepest self, these obstacles cease to be walls and instead become gateways. Every experience, even the harshest, can be lived as part of a path of growth and meaning. I want you, who are listening right now, to reflect on this. How many times have you defined yourself solely by the roles you play? How many times have you limited yourself to the image others have of you? And more importantly, do you have the courage to look within and say, I am this too, and I accept myself nonetheless? This is the invitation of midlife, to embrace life in its totality, to accept that we are made of light and shadow, of victories and failures, of joys and sorrows, and yet we are worthy of living fully. I want to propose a simple exercise. Write in the comments the phrase, I accept myself completely. Say it as a commitment to yourself, as a step toward your individuation. And if you wish to continue this journey of self-knowledge and transformation, subscribe now to the Unshakable Mind channel. Here, each reflection is an invitation to look deeper, to find meaning even where the world only sees crisis. Remember, the most terrifying thing may be to accept yourself completely, but it is precisely in this act that lies the key to freedom, inner peace, and the authentic life you have always sought. Midlife is, without a doubt, one of the most liberating phases of life, and yet many face it with fear, as if it were a period of loss and decline. But I tell you, it is not a time to lament what has passed. It is not a time to despair over what was left behind. It is, above all, a moment of celebration. Celebrate what we have gained. Every experience lived, every pain faced, every challenge overcome has granted us wisdom. Every tear, every mistake, every victory has given us clarity about ourselves and about life. Every disappointment has taught us resilience. And it is this combination, wisdom, clarity, resilience, that allows us to see life more deeply, more lucidly, more authentically. Midlife is the point at which we can finally begin to build a life that truly reflects our authentic self. No longer a life dictated by others, no longer a life guided by fear or external expectations, but a life that feels complete, real, and whole. It is the phase where we can stop merely accumulating experiences, merely experimenting with who we want to be, and begin to truly live. Think about it. For decades, we have been like apprentices, exploring the world and ourselves, trying to understand what would make us happy, trying to discover our place in the world. Now, in midlife, we have reached the point where we can transform all this learning into conscious action. It is time to live aligned with the soul, with our deepest values, with what gives meaning to our existence. Midlife is not the beginning of the end. It is the end of the beginning. It is the transition from preparation to realization. It is the moment when all the pieces we accumulated throughout youth and the first stage of life begin to fall into place, revealing the figure of a more authentic, more conscious and deeper self. In this period, we begin to realize that we no longer need to prove anything to anyone. We no longer need to seek external approval or conform to others' expectations. On the contrary, we have the freedom to carve a path that is exclusively our own, to create a life that reflects who we truly are. And this freedom, my friends, is a rare treasure. It allows us to finally experience authenticity. It allows us to say no to what no longer serves us and yes to what nourishes the soul. It allows us to face old fears with courage, embrace the shadow we once feared, and integrate all parts of ourselves into a real and powerful harmony. It is also the time to celebrate the depth of relationships, to cultivate true connections, to invest in experiences that bring meaning, not just status or appearances. Midlife teaches us that the value of life lies in living fully, in every moment, with awareness, purpose, and passion for what truly matters. And I want to propose to you who are listening now, write in the comments the phrase, "I choose to celebrate my life." Say it as a commitment to yourself. Acknowledge the richness you have already accumulated and open yourself to the freedom that midlife offers. And do not forget, subscribe to the Unshakable Mind channel. Turn on notifications because here we will continue to explore the journey of self-discovery, integration, and personal transformation. Each video is a step further toward your authentic self. Remember, midlife is not a sentence, not a burden, not a limit. It is, in fact, the opportunity to finally live fully, consciously, and authentically. It is the moment to harvest the fruits of what you have spent years cultivating internally, your wisdom, your resilience, and your authenticity. And so we arrive at the most important point of this reflection. Midlife is not a decline, not a period of endings, not the end of the story. On the contrary, it is the beginning of something much deeper, something that transcends superficial achievements, external expectations, and societal norms. It is a true turning point, a call from the soul itself, inviting us to enter the life that is truly worth living. At 40 and beyond, we do not start with all the answers, but we begin to ask the right questions. Questions that lead us to the core of our being, that guide us to explore what truly matters, that challenge us to confront the shadow, integrate light and darkness, reconcile dreams and disappointments. It is in this process that authentic life is born, a life that pulses from within, a life that echoes in our soul before it echoes in the outer world. It is the moment to stop living according to someone else's script, to abandon masks that no longer represent us, to release what limits us and embrace what makes us feel whole. Every experience accumulated until now, every joy, every loss, every pain, every victory, becomes the solid foundation upon which we build our true self. And even though the journey is challenging, I assure you, it is profoundly rewarding. For those who traverse this phase with courage, awareness, and self-love, discover something transformative. They discover that life truly begins when we allow ourselves to hear our own voice, when we stop blindly following external expectations and begin walking toward the deepest meaning of our existence. This is where true freedom comes in. Not the superficial freedom to do whatever you want without commitment, but the inner freedom, the kind that arises from self-understanding, self-knowledge, and complete self-acceptance. The freedom to say yes to what nourishes your soul and no to what no longer serves you. The freedom to create a life aligned with who you truly are, without fear, without guilt, without haste. And I tell you, this freedom is a rare and precious gift. It allows us to look back without regrets and look forward with hope. It allows us to find beauty and meaning even in the most difficult moments. It allows us to integrate light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, courage and fear, and in doing so, become complete, whole, and truly alive human beings. So now, I want to speak directly to you who are listening. If something in these words resonated with your heart, if you feel that the time has come to begin your own journey of individuation, write in the comments, "I choose to live fully from now on." Make this phrase a commitment to yourself. And of course, subscribe to the Unshakable Mind channel. Here, we will continue to explore together the paths of self-discovery, deep psychology, and personal transformation. Turn on notifications so you won't miss any reflection that may guide you toward your authentic life. Remember, life truly begins at 40, not because we will have all the answers, but because we finally start asking the right questions, questions that lead us to a richer, deeper, and more meaningful existence, questions that challenge us to look within, confront our fears, embrace the shadow, and celebrate the light within each of us. So celebrate this moment, celebrate what you have already lived, and prepare for what is yet to come. The journey of the soul is just beginning, and now you are ready to walk fully, with courage, awareness, and authenticity. Life begins here, and it is yours.